All right, now that you know whether you have to file or not, or even if you don't have to file, you may have chosen to file because you want that refund or you want a certain statute of limitations. But now what we're going to talk about is the filing status. One of the first real decisions that we have to make here, and it's an important decision because it indicates a lot of different things. It's going to tell us income thresholds. It's going to help us with credit preservation. Do we meet specific credits? It's going to tell us what our tax bracket is. It's going to tell us what our standard deduction is. So in this video, we're going to go through the different requirements or the different filing statuses and the requirements for each of those filing statuses. So let's not waste any time. Let's jump right into the different filing statuses. Okay, so let's look at these different filing statuses. The first one we're going to look at is single. Now, when we're looking at the filing statuses, what we're generally looking at is the last day of the year, so December 31st. That's going to be what determines our filing status. Now, if you were not married at the end of the year, generally what you're going to be is you're either going to be single or you're going to be head of household. So a single is going to be a person who is not married and they do not have a qualifying dependent in order to qualify them to be a head of household. So they're unmarried, they don't have any dependents, qualifying dependents. Now, if they do have a qualifying dependent, they're supporting a qualifying person, then what would happen is we could change it to head of household. Now, we like head of household because when we look at single, we're going to have a lower standard deduction. We're going to be in a worse tax bracket than if we are head of household. Head of household gives us a better tax bracket and it gives us more of a standard deduction. So if we qualify for head of household, we would prefer that over single. So that's what we're looking at. Now, what happens is when we're looking at head of household, you're unmarried, you're supporting a qualifying person. Okay? And I will get into the different qualifying persons, relatives, and qualifying child in the next video. So I'm not avoiding that topic for you. The next video goes into who qualifies as a dependent. I just don't want to complicate it for this video. Now, I do want to mention that single and married, like I said, that is going to be on the last day of the year, right? But there are situations where you may have somebody who can still qualify as a head of household even though they were married. And that's in a very limited circumstance. That's going to be in one of two circumstances. If you're legally separated, okay, if you're legally separated from your spouse, it's not a formalized divorce yet, but you're legally separated, you cannot file married, okay? You're not able to. You have to file a single or head of household if you have the qualifying individual. If there's a qualifying person, you'd be head of household. So that's for legally separated. What happens if you're not legally separated? Well, here's a rule with that. So let's say that your spouse left you and they've been gone for over 6 months and they have no intent on returning, and maybe you don't even want them back. Maybe you're like, good riddance, don't let the door hit you on the way out, right? Whatever it may be, but they're not coming back. Well, you know what? You would possibly qualify as an abandoned spouse. And what it allows you to do is if they've been gone for at least 6 months, and not just at college or military, they have no intent on returning, so 6 months, and you have a qualifying person, okay, you have that qualifying person, you have say a child that you're taking care of, and you can claim that child as a dependent, right? If you're meeting these requirements, then you can go ahead and file as head of household, even though you're still married at that time, but you can't have lived with them within the last 6 months, and they can't have any intent of really returning, and you have to have that qualifying child or qualifying person that will allow you to go ahead and take that status. But that would be a head of household status. All right, we've talked about single, we've talked about head of household. Let's jump over to the other portion of it, and married. So on December 31st of the year, were you married? So if you're married, what you're looking at is really two different choices. Married filing jointly, which almost all married couples are going to be better off if they do the married filing jointly. The way that the code is structured, it restricts us quite a bit if we're married filing separately. So married filing separately limits some of the credits and deductions that we can take, so it makes it a little bit more challenging for us. But if we're married filing jointly, what we have is one return. We just do one return. So like when we look at the 1040, we're going to see that we take all of the income from both spouses and we put it on line 1 of the 1040. We're only filing one return, and we're both going to be legally liable on that return. But it's going to give us a higher standard deduction. It's going to give us more expansive tax brackets. So generally, we're looking at married filing jointly. Now, there are some small situations where married filing separately can be helpful. So sometimes people want to file separately because maybe they don't trust their spouse so much. They're a little too aggressive on their tax returns, right? Or maybe they're not reporting all their income. They're like, hey, I don't want any liability. I'm trying to avoid my liability. So they may be trying to think of it from a perspective of risk management. Or maybe maybe one spouse has high student loans and there's a difference level in income, and they think, hey, I'm on an income driven repayment plan. So maybe they try to look at it from that perspective. But like I said, most situations it's going to be married filing jointly is going to be your better status. Now, I skipped one, and it's going to be the qualifying surviving spouse. We're going to spend a little bit more time on this one. So when you have a qualifying surviving spouse, it means the spouse passed away during the year. And when I told you before that filing status is determined on the last day of the year, the qualifying surviving spouse is an exception to that. So what happens is, say you had a spouse that passed away in April, right? And then what happens is the surviving spouse goes ahead and next tax year, so if they passed away in April of 2025, when it came to 2026, maybe they're in January or February, they're getting ready to go ahead and file their taxes, and they're trying to figure out, hey, what is my filing status? Well, on the last day of the year, you're single, but here's the thing. If your spouse passes away during the year, you still get to file married filing jointly during their year of death. So that's one of those situations that is not determined on December 31st. It's because they passed away during the year. So you get to take that married filing jointly if you were married at all during that year and they passed away during that year. Now, if you have a qualifying person, right? So you have a child, a qualifying child on this, a dependent child, then you get another status. You get the qualifying surviving spouse. And what happens is the date of death, the year of death, you're married filing jointly. And then for 2 years, as long as you still have that qualifying dependent child, then what you're going to be able to do is claim qualifying spouse. So year of death, married filing jointly. Next year, qualifying surviving spouse. Next year, qualifying surviving spouse. Qualifying surviving spouse is going to give us the same benefits of married filing jointly. And then after that 3rd year and the 4th year, you're going to either be single or head of household, depending on what whether you have a qualifying person or not at that point. So that's the requirements for it. So what I'll do though, because the qualifying spouse can kind of cause some issues, I want to go ahead and I want to give you a table that's going to show you what the requirements are for qualifying spouse, and I'm going to give you an example of qualifying spouse as well. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. All right, so just quickly, here's the requirements for a surviving spouse. So you had a spouse that passed away during the current year. They have not remarried. They have a dependent child, and the child lives with the surviving spouse. The surviving spouses maintain their household for themselves and for the dependent child. And the maximum amount of time that you can take this surviving spouse status is 2 years. So that's 2 years following the date of death, because the first one right after date of death is going to be married filing jointly, surviving, and then we go on from there. So just to recap, spouse died, dependent child, you maintain that house for the child, and that child's living with you. All right, so let's go ahead and look at a quick example for you, and we'll wrap this up. So here is our example. We have a spouse that dies in 2023. The surviving spouse does not remarry. One dependent child, age 10, lives with the surviving spouse. The surviving spouse maintains the household. All right, we meet the requirements here. So here's what's going to happen when we're looking at this. So 2023 is the year of death. We know you're married filing jointly in that current year. It doesn't matter the month of death. It could have been January. It could have been November. It doesn't matter. We're going to be married filing jointly as long as we're married at any time during that year, or married at the time of the death during that year. So married filing jointly. Then what we're going to do, and they could do married filing separately if they wanted, but generally you're going to go married filing jointly. Then what we're going to do in the following year, 2024, we still have that child. The child's living with the surviving spouse. Surviving spouse is paying for the household. Qualifying surviving spouse. That's going to be the first year that we get to claim qualifying surviving spouse. Then in 2025, all right, still taking care of them. The child's still going to be qualifying, still living with them, still paying half the support, qualifying child. Now we're in 2026. What we're probably going to do is we're going to do head of household because the child is still going to likely be a qualifying child, so we're going to be able to claim them. And now we're at the head of household status. It's not as good as married filing jointly, but it's still better than filing as single. All right. Hey, if this video has been helping you, please go ahead and subscribe to this channel. I'm going to continue to do more information on the different steps of the 1040. So our next video, though, is going to be on who qualifies as a dependent. So you heard me talk about a qualifying child. Well, there's also a qualifying relative. So if we're looking at whether we can claim somebody as a dependent, we need to know that. After we do that video, we're going to start on step one, or line one of our 1040, and we're going to start working through those different lines on that 1040, and we'll look at some of the schedules. All right, thank you for watching.